Welcome back to Brands Hatch for the second of two races this weekend for the Lotus on Track Gillies Trophy. The cars making their way up to the grid in pole position, going the way of Andrew Walsh. This grid based on a driver's second best qualifying time in the qualifying session on Friday, and so Andrew Walsh starts on pole. Simon Scuffer with him. Yesterday's winner Chris Randall lines up third, and further back on the grid there are plenty of other quick drivers who need to make progress, and amongst them is Steve Williams, who will start 32nd on the grid. Now Steve didn't even get to the first corner in the first race before he was involved in an accident that also wiped out David Skeggs. David has taken over Malcolm Sanders' car and he starts right at the very back, and those two are going to be worth watching. Sean Bicknell missing from the grid, sadly. Well, yesterday we had a long safety car period. We had a red flag as well to bring an early halt to the action. Let's hope that this is a trouble-free race. Green flag wave to signify that everybody's where they should be. The drivers now look towards the lighting gantry. The lights go red. When the lights go out, we're going to be in business, which happens now. And the best start of all comes from the pole sitter, Andrew Walsh. Bad start though by David Harvey. And as the cars power their way towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time, Russ Treasure with the Dayglow red car there already in trouble. He's been in difficulties all weekend and it has got no better for him. He therefore pulls off the circuit out of the race. Everybody else in the meantime powering their way then now up through Druids for the first time, and you can see just what a very busy grid it is. Number 2 Paul Golding there around the outside and loses it. The man that created the series spins on lap 1. Paul Golding spins up at Druids. Everybody else survives, do they? Yes, they've all managed to wriggle past him. And back into the race goes Paul Golding, a bit red-faced, but thankfully everybody has avoided him. No contact, no damage, but Chris Randall it is then from the second row of the grid, who's found a way through into the lead. Christian Watkins trying to make some progress further back as well as the cars turn their way through Surtees and McLaren for the first time. Randall leading, Andrew Walsh second, Simon Scuffer third as they come up towards the completion of lap number 1. Chris Randall's had 3 wins this year. Andrew Walsh has had 1 here on the Indy circuit. Simon Scuffer has been there or thereabouts. He hasn't had a win in one of the sprint races, one of the scratch races, but he has won in the handicap race at Alton Park. Here's a replay of Paul Golding, series instigator, going a little bit too rapidly around Druids. Round comes the back, lots of tar smoke as he tries to stand on the brakes there, stop the car. It drifts back into the middle of the road. That was very close indeed. He's lucky to get away unscathed from that. In the meantime, Chris Randall leads along Cooper Straight, still being chased by Walsh. Then Simon Scuffer meets 3rd and 4th and 5th at the moment, as you see Gavin Kirby spinning off in the background, the regular winner of Class A. Gavin Kirby having a spin. The battle for 4th and 5th though at the moment, being headed by Andrew Kell with Tony Doe next up, and Tony Doe going great guns with his Elise S1 that's powered by a turbocharged Audi engine. Race leaders across the line. Chris Randall leading by 9/10 of a second now from Andrew Walsh. Simon Scuffer 3rd, Andrew Kell still 4th, Tony Doe 5th ahead of Chris Pearson, and then David Harvey 7th, recovering after that poor start. Great shot there of Andrew Walsh, hard at work as he turns his way through Druids, fending off Simon Scuffer. Sideways indeed is Andrew Walsh coming out of Druids now. What, if anything, can he do about the race leader Chris Randall? The cars drop downhill once again. Replay here of the Class A fun and games. Michael Edwards ahead of Hans Baumhart, who goes up the inside, loses it, gets it onto the grass and slides across the circuit. In case of hands down, I think that. Anyway, Hans Baumhart back into the race, albeit he will have lost ground and therefore possibly now any chance of winning Class A. That looks as though it's going to go the way of Michael Edwards at the moment. Gavin Kirby having spun himself off earlier on as well. The gap between the top 2 extending as now David Harvey is starting to come back at Chris Pearson. Look, the 2 of them together here. David Harvey in a 340R on the back of the Motorsport Elise in the hands of Chris Pearson. Up they come now towards the hairpin at Druids, and Tony Doe just ahead of them. This car with the 1.8 litre turbocharged Audi engine going very well, but Chris Pearson tries the outside, then the inside, coming down towards Graham Hill Bend, the 2 almost overlapping into the braking area there, but Tony Doe hangs onto the place then. He runs a little wide up onto the curb, and now getting the run on the inside along Cooper Straight is Chris Pearson. Is he going to be able to go through? And he's got the inside line for Surtees. He does go through. Tony Doe forced off line there. In fact, David Harvey comes through as well. Tremendous little battle between these 3. David Harvey gains a place then in the 340R, and Tony Doe doesn't just lose places, he's also losing time. That car not responding as they come out of Clark Curve, so the gap just widening, and that is John Thorne, who's planted himself in the gravel. Here's a replay of how he did it. The back comes round and tries to correct it, but I'm afraid ultimately off he goes into the gravel bed, and that's one of the Vauxhalls that has gone AWOL then. Increasingly the Vauxhall drivers switching over to Lotus chassis for this series. John Thorne, I'm afraid, in the gravel and out of the race. Now I'm just looking to see, yes, we are going to get the safety car. There it is, look in the background. The safety car comes out on track. Safety car boards being shown all the way around the circuit, and Ian Barnett and David Willey, the safety car crew, will pick up the race leader. The incident will be cleared up, and then we'll be back to racing once again. And it's going to be a pretty short, as you can see, 3.5 minutes of racing up towards the checkered flag here. Chris Randall slows the pace, and what he wants to do is get everybody else to slow behind him and then floor the throttle and try and gain an advantage on them. Chris Randall, who was here a few weeks ago in very wet conditions, racing in the historic Group C races in his Nissan, comes across the line then now. He leads the race as the green flag flies, and you can see that he has managed to steal a march over everybody else, with David Harvey up on the inside of Chris Pearson as they go down towards Paddock Hill Bend. That should give David Harvey a place. Let's see as the cars come uphill in and amongst the traffic now. So it's a very crowded circuit indeed. Paul Golding in number 2 being that there. Andrew Walsh turns his way through Druids. He's lost out here to the leader, Chris Randall, very definitely. He's keeping Simon Scuffham at bay. And what's happening in the background, look, has Chris Pearson been able to keep David Harvey at bay? No, he has not. David Harvey goes through now. The other man in a hurry is Andrew Kell. Look, number 67, there he is in the blue car on the inside. Andrew Kell now closing on Simon Scuffham now. Can we get Kell on the podium here? He's got his sights set on catching and passing Simon Scuffham. There's David Harvey going very well also now, up into 5th place after his poor start. Simon Scuffham 3rd. He was 2nd in yesterday's race. He's going to go one worse today, seemingly, unless he can get himself onto the tail of Andrew Walsh, and that gap does not look as though it's going to come down. 2 minutes and 12 seconds remain. Randall leading, Walsh 2nd, Scuffham is 3rd, Kell 4th, and David Harvey 5th, and Tony Doe having his most impressive showing of the season so far, rounding out the top 6. The race leaders turn their way through Druids. Andrew Kell goes through, David Harvey goes through, there is Tony Doe, bit of trim flapping on the side of the car, proof of how close the racing has been. Tony Doe drops downhill, still coming under pressure by the look of it. Yes, he's got Neil McKean tucked up behind him, and Neil McKean here might yet be able to gain another place before the end of this race. We are into the last, minute and 3/4 now. Still the quick drivers working their way through the traffic. Chris Pearson heading towards us, and he too being pretty busy, having to work really hard for his place. Amongst the others queuing up behind him are Christian Watkins and also now Steve Williams. Now there, look, going around the right-hander of Clearways, you can see that Steve Williams is into the top 10 now, having started 32nd on the grid. He's got lots of experience of racing MGs before Lotuses, has Steve Williams, but he's going tremendously well here, up from very nearly flat last on the grid. The other driver still making progress is David Skeggs, who's taken over Martin Sanders' car for this race, and David Skeggs is on target for now 14th place. He should be able to gain more ground before the end though. He's on the back of Hans Baumhart, as here number 5 Tony Doe turns his way through the right-hander of Druids. He's got Neil McKean right up behind him. This the battle for 6th place now, and there out of the race sadly is number 69, the car parked by the side of the road. Paul Harding going no further. Paul Harding, a retirement, having gone very well in yesterday's race, but here is Andrew Kell still just fending off David Harvey. They're going to squeeze one more lap out of this, I reckon, looking at the clock. 36 seconds still to go. The race leader Chris Randall will be through in a moment as the cars now power their way up past the pits once again. Is David Harvey close enough to think about making a move this time on Andrew Kell? Not quite, and nor is Simon Scuffham really close enough to have a go at 2nd place man Andrew Walsh. We're on the last lap, there's confirmation of it. It's Tony Doe and Neil McKean come through almost nose to tail now. They're the next gaggle of cars headed by Chris Pearson. David Harvey powering his way up towards the right-hander at Druids. Didn't really get a race in at all yesterday, the car retiring just before the red lights were switched on. He had to drive off the circuit with a mechanical problem. He's gone much better today despite the poor start, and in the background, look, Tony Doe was slow out of Druids. Now wait to see, can Neil McKean find a way past him? Those two nose to tail. This is very much the master of the Lotus on track in his trophy. Chris Randall is heading for what's going to be a 4th win of the season. Here he comes up over the line. Checkered flag at the ready, and Chris Randall makes it a double at the DTM Brands Hatch weekend. He wins both races, and he does so in style. Look at the gap over 2nd place man Andrew Walsh. Coming home for 3rd is Simon Scuffham, and 4th is just going to go the way of Andrew Kell, despite the best efforts there of chasing David Harvey, who comes home in 5th place. 6th is going to go the way on the last lap of Neil McKean, who gets himself ahead of Tony Doe. And Steve Williams from the back of the grid come through to take 10th position. Confirmation then of the results. Over 3 seconds is the margin Randall has over Walsh. Scuffham 3rd ahead of Kell and Harvey. Neil McKean 6th ahead of Tony Doe on the last lap, with Chris Pearson fending off Christian Watkins, and Steve Williams coming home to round out the top 10. There you have the drivers on the podium. Chris Randall on the top step for the 2nd time this weekend as the overall race winner. Andrew Walsh goes one better to be 2nd this time out. Simon Scuffham pushed one place down. He finishes in 3rd. And the class winners, well, Class B is Neil McKean, and Class A goes the way of the very happy Michael Edwards. The Lotus on track Elite Trophy presentations to the class winners. There is Michael Edwards being presented with a trophy by Martin Donnelly, former Lotus Grand Prix driver, of course. Neil McKean takes Class B, and once again has this propensity to wear a lampshade on his head. And Chris Randall not only wins outright, but he also takes Class C honours as well. And the champagne is sprayed. The drivers have had a great weekend here at Brands Hatch. We may have had safety cars, we've also had great racing.
So Michael, congratulations, your first win in Class A. How was your race?
Very good, thank you. There's about 3 or 4 guys in Class A that can win, and it was my turn. I was the one that was lucky this week, but there's some good other guys out there, and it was a really good race. Really enjoyed it, fantastic.
So Neil, another win this weekend, eh?
It's going really well, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. The sun must be shining on me today anyway.
It certainly has been. Now I hear you washed your car for the first time in 18 months. Do you reckon that helped?
I was bullied into it, it certainly didn't. It's lost its soul, and I'm going to have to sell it and buy a new one and get that just as dirty.
Don't do that before Silverstone. I want to see you on the podium again. Well done.
Thanks very much.
Randy, another win.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it?
You're on a roll, I tell you. You said you were lucky on this one. Why was that?
I was lucky, yeah. Walshy dropped a gear coming down Graham Hill Bend, and I just drove past him, fairly straightforward, really.
So next time at Silverstone, you need him to drive faster, you say?
I do need him to drive fast to give me a bit of competition, but I'm sure he'll pull something out of the bag at some stage.
Well, that's it from us here at Brands this weekend. We'll be back next time from Silverstone. Let's hope there's a lot more action and a lot less safety car.